Welcome to the Conservative Continuum. I am your host, Mick Meow. So let's talk about what's coming up. April 3rd, the OK GOP Action Team will be hosting an Oklahoma State Republican Party Chairman Forum. The venue is still being arranged, but it is planning to be on at 6 p.m. on the 3rd of April. Both A.J. Ferrati and Sean Roberts have agreed to be there. April 4th is Election Day. We've got school boards, mayoral races, and the county clerk race that's coming up. Early voting is going to start on March the 30th and the 31st, so make sure that you get in and get those votes going. I personally am endorsing Brian Shellum for Edmond Mayor and Marissa Treat for Oklahoma County Clerk. So let's get out and get that vote going, okay? Please. Also, we're going to be doing some great interviews with Jerry Childs for Edmond School Board and Lori Togel for Putnam City School Board. So make sure that you tune in to us. Now, please subscribe to me on patreon.com/MickMeow. You can also find the Conservative Continuum on Rumble and Facebook. Today, we have a blessed cat show with New Zealand author, filmmaker, and public speaker Trevor Louden. He has done much research on the radical left and the Marxist terrorist movement and their covert influence on mainstream politics. He's going to be discussing the Marxist agenda that has invaded our church, and yes, it is here in Oklahoma. So grab your kitty treats and your milk, and let's get ready to engage. Well, it's time for the caterwaul, so let's get to it. That's right, Dex. Now, what I want to do today is a little different. I want to read to you from a book, New Zeal, that was done in 2011. And they had an article that was called Exposing Marxism in the Church. While Marxism has infiltrated every major religion in the world, from Buddhism to Judaism to Islam, Western Christianity, particularly American Christianity, has been a priority target. There was an investigative journalist, Cliff Kincaid, and he was of the public group American Survival. They are fighting back, and I believe that they still are, with a great new website known as Exposing Marxism in the Church. According to Mr. Kincaid, too many Christians have been duped into accepting this kind of heaven on earth through the pursuit of revolutionary Marxism. Communism's death toll has been 100 million dead. But don't think that that liberation theology is the only that is occurring in other countries. It is happening here in Oklahoma. Now, according to Mr. Kincaid, we are faced with another threat, and that is radical Islam, which is the religion of the sword. Back in 2011, Mr. Kincaid stated that the situation is the following. The Marxists have weakened us from within to such an extent that to many of our own religious leaders, not to mention elected officials of government, don't even recognize the threat posed by radical Islam. Now, fast forward to 2020 when the Standard posted this article, Marxist critical race theory infiltrates churches and culture. When the Southern Baptist, the largest Protestant domination in the country, endorses critical race theory, you know American Christianity has a Marxism problem. At the Southern Baptist National Convention in Birmingham, Alabama, that was in June of 2020, a resolution on CRT and intersectionality gained passage with a strong majority. The resolution affirmed the Bible as the first, last, and sufficient authority in guiding the church on dealing with social issues and evils, and said that critical race theory and intersectionality should only be used in submission to Scripture. So, the resolution described critical race theory as a set of tools to explain how race functions in society and also how it functions here in the United States. Today, we are going to be talking with Trevor Louden on this topic. We are going to be discussing the invasion of our churches by the Marxist agenda. After the break, please join me in welcoming Mr. Trevor Louden. Welcome to the Conservative Continuum. I am your host, Mick Meow. Thank you to all of our sponsors who are out there. Make sure you go to patreon.com/Mick Meow to become a sponsor today. So this is an exciting show. Y'all are going to have your little minds blown. We are here with Trevor Louden. He is an author, a filmmaker. He's a public speaker from New Zealand. He has been researching for more than 30 years the radical left and the Marxist terrorist movement, and then their covert influence on the mainstream politics. He has had films such as The Enemy Within, The Enemies Within the Church, and if you haven't seen it on YouTube or Epic Times, Counterpunch, you got to go and watch it. It is phenomenal. So please welcome my guest, Trevor Louden. Sir, thank you so much for being with us today. It is an absolute honor to have you. I love watching your show.
Well, look, thanks so much, and thanks for having me on. It's a privilege, so it goes both ways.
We appreciate it. So I have been watching and just kind of gaining knowledge, learning all about this Marxist movement that has infiltrated every aspect of our culture, and unfortunately now it's in our churches. I know that's not a new thing, but I have heard you make statements that American Christianity built this country and that man's rights come from God, not from government, which I wholeheartedly agree with 100%. You've also made the film Enemies Within the Church, and viewers can go to enemieswithinthechurch.com and get that film today. It's scary. I've seen it a while back, and it was almost nightmarish. I tell you that much. You don't need to watch a horror movie. Just watch this one. So that's the topic that I would like to talk with you today about, that infiltration of the leftist Marxist within the church. Now, we know that's spreading through the evangelical and the Baptist congregations. You stated that the Marxist doctrines are running rampant through the Southern Baptist and wider evangelical churches. They are adopting LGBTQ agendas. They are making attacks like white privilege, or making remarks about white privilege from the pulpit, adopting critical race theory. They are supporting and promoting illegal immigration resettlement throughout those churches. If you wouldn't mind, sir, would you please give us a history lesson? Tell us from the beginning, that historical background, how we've gotten to this point in America.
Well, thank you. The point is right. Man's rights come from God, not from government. And this is what made America a special country. No other country in the world had this principle. It was always divine right of kings. The king spoke to God and told people what to do. And it always happened to be that God agreed with the king. And so when America was founded, America had enemies right from the start. Nobody, all these dictators didn't want this great idea to spread. So along came the communist movement in the 1840s. A lot of communists came to America after the first communist revolution in Germany failed in 1848. The very first communist front set up in America was the Methodist Federation for Social Action. So the Methodist Church was one of the very first targets, because the communists realized the church was the backbone of America. America was the only real impediment to a worldwide communist revolution. So the churches would have to be taken over and turned to serve the revolution. So through the 20s and the 30s, the communists deeply infiltrated the Episcopalians, the Methodists, the mainstream churches. They affiliated them with the National Council of Churches, which was affiliated with the World Council of Churches, which was run by the Soviet KGB. They used to call it the Communist Party at Prayer. Well, through the 1970s, so this drove a lot of people out into the evangelical movements. They wanted real Christianity, not some socialist, watered down version of it. So a lot of people moved into the evangelical movement, and these people tended to be very politically conservative. They supported Ronald Reagan, they supported Israel, they loved America, they loved the Constitution. So in the 1970s, the leftists started to penetrate the evangelical movement. They had a thing called the Chicago Declaration, which was all about distribution of wealth, about ending America's position as world leader, all this kind of thing. But it failed because the evangelicals, they were loving Ronald Reagan, they were getting behind the moral majority, they were conservative politically. And that's, a real Christian should be conservative politically. That's a natural reading of the Bible. Excuse me. But this movement that failed started to go, when they failed to influence evangelical Christianity, they went into the Bible colleges. They went into the seminaries. They started to take over departments. They started to fire conservative professors and hire more liberal, weak professors. And by the time that the 90s had rolled around, the Baptist seminaries were starting to resemble the secular universities. The universities didn't used to be communist 100 years ago. Now, almost all of the universities are communist controlled. Well, the same trajectory has happened to the Bible colleges and the seminaries, only about 30 years behind. So we're right in the midst now of a major Marxist takeover of almost every Bible college and seminary in the country. What we call the woke church is the Marxist church. Critical race theory comes from the Communist Party. The theory of white privilege comes out of the Maoist movement. The refugee resettlement movement is completely communist. The open borders movement is completely communist. The LGBTQ movement, was started by the Communist Party member Harry Hay. But all of these communist movements are now becoming mainstream in not just the traditional churches, but now also the evangelicals and the Southern Baptists. And the goal is a socialist America. And the goal is simple: drive the churches to the left so we can no longer elect conservative candidates. We only elect socialist candidates, and the churches will help to deliver this country into a socialist, communist hellhole. That's where we are right now. Wokeism is another name for consciousness raising, which was developed in the Cultural Revolution of Chairman Mao in the 60s. In the 60s, they ripped down these statues in China. They burnt the books. They suppressed history. That's exactly what Black Lives Matter and the woke movement is doing in America today. We're in a Maoist revolution in America today, and the churches, many of them are helping to drive it, unfortunately.
Wow. That is so true. Thank you so much for bringing us through that. And you see it everywhere. I unfortunately, people are starting to embrace this. We're going to take a quick break. We've got to take care of that cat. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. We've got more to talk about with Trevor Louden. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Conservative Continuum. I am your host, Mick Meow. So we are here with Trevor Louden, and we are talking about this Marxist infiltration within the churches. And you have laid it out for us. We have gotten to this point where it has been through our culture 30 years later, or 30 years ago, we started having this infiltrate into the churches, if I'm saying this correctly.
Well, into the evangelical churches, the mainstream churches, was 100 years ago.
Gotcha. So really, in America, we have started about 30 years ago seeing this push, and I know that the Baptist, the Southern Baptist in Birmingham, Alabama, I think it was 2020 when they
Yes.
came out and they adopted CRT and intersectionality, and unfortunately, I've heard it myself where we've got this lack of talking about sin, lack of talking about consequences. Everything is feel good, feel wonderful, just be in love, and the Bible's more than that. The teachings of Christ are more than that.
And part of this whole God is love is part of the problem. God is love, but he's a lot more than just love. The law comes first. Jesus didn't come to abolish the law. He came to add to the law that had already been established in the Old Testament. So the undermining of the Old Testament has definitely been a big part of the Marxist push. If you can separate people from the law of God and you just make it all about love, you can do anything. Well, it's loving to accept millions of refugees across the border. It's loving to accept LGBTQ sin into the church. It's loving to accept our Marxist brothers into the church. No, it's not. It is loving to call out sin. It is loving to tell truth. It is loving to stand against treason. You know, the open borders movement. Well, what happened to the Israelites when they didn't build a wall around their city? You know, yeah, they were
They were
annihilated,
taken.
right? You know, this is the Old Testament has a lot of was a national security document. It
Yes.
told you how to run your city, how to keep your state safe, because only when you live in safety and security can you really build that faithful godlike culture that you need. And so it's but these tenets are now all through the churches. You know, you talked about Alabama at the conference in Alabama in 2020. You know, Walter Strickland, who is a Marxist, a follower of James Cone, who wrote the book The Black Church and Marxism, What Do They Have to Say to Each Other? Walter Strickland, working with Russell Moore and J.D. Greer and others, got the Baptist Church to adopt critical race theory, to adopt intersectionality. Critical race theory was developed by Noel Ignatin and Ted Allen, two Communist Party USA members. That's their concept. It was all about, this is why they did it. The traditional Marxism is the workers will rise up and take control of the bosses. The workers will rise up and take away the wealth of the exploiting bosses. But that doesn't work in America. You know, people appreciate people who work hard and make money in America. It's how things should go. But in America, they decided to use race for the revolution. Because you can change your social class in America. You can start out dirt poor and end up pretty rich. You can start out rich and end up dirt poor too, which is how it should be. But your race is always with you. So Ted Allen and Noel Ignatieff decided to use race as the means of a communist revolution. This is where critical race theory comes from. So now it is not so much the workers will take the wealth of the capitalists. It is the oppressed peoples of color who will take away the power from the white Christian capitalist patriarchy.
Mm.
This is the whole Black Lives Matter argument. Black Lives Matter is a Chinese communist operation, but you have churches taking a knee to these people because they've accepted this race-based Marxism as somehow Christianity. You know, Christianity deals with racism very easily. Do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. That's all you need to know. You don't need all these endless racial reconciliation programs and this white privilege stuff and this critical race theory. That's all Marxism. That's revolutionary communism. You just need to treat people as you'd like to be treated yourself. That's in the Bible, and it's all we need to know about racism.
You know, that is so true. I have wondered, how is this being reconciled? All of this with the teachings of Christ, you know, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, you know, love your neighbor as yourself. We are all, you know, sinners and fall short of the glory of God. That's why Christ came. So how are they trying to reconcile all of this? I mean, I hear it. All I hear is, and listen, God is love, you know, praise be to God. But God is more than just love. You have to have discipline with that love. So how are they
Well, look,
reconciling this?
I'm sure most parents love their kids.
Yeah.
They all love their kids, but they have rules, do they not?
Yes.
Every good household has rules, and it's a lot easier to love your kids when your kids obey your rules. It's a
Yeah.
lot easier to love your spouse when your spouse obeys the rules of the marriage. It's a lot easier to love your business partners when they obey the rules. And so to push this Marxism, they've had to basically marginalize the Old Testament. They've had to get rid of the Ten Commandments. Envy. There's a commandment against envy. Marxism is based on envy. You have more than me. That's unfair. We need to get the government to redistribute the wealth. You have white privilege. That's unfair. We need to get the government to give reparations to black people. We need to get the government to do affirmative action. We need to suppress white privilege and promote the oppressed peoples of color. This is a jealousy-based, envy-based Marxist argument, but it's now all through the churches. And they just have to read the Ten Commandments to know this is completely false. But so many pastors now are so ignorant or so unwilling to even discuss the Old Testament that they just, it's all about, God is love, therefore we must welcome the LGBTQ, therefore we must welcome illegal immigrants, therefore we must be more concerned about global warming than sub-global warming, all of these things. So destroy the Old Testament, destroy the law, make it all about love, and then use that to drive the Marxist arguments home. And that's what's happening in the Southern Baptist, which is why many traditional churches are leaving the SBC right now. A lot of them are, because they're seeing through this scam. But we still got the problem with the Bible colleges. We still got the problem with Campus Crusade for Christ, now known as Cru, InterVarsity, World Vision, all these organizations that were once sound Christian organizations are woke. Don't send any money to Campus Crusade for Christ, Cru. Don't send any money to World Vision. Don't send any money to these organizations, and be very, very careful if you send your children to these so-called Christian universities or Bible colleges. Check them out. Most of them are as bad or even worse than the secular colleges now. So you're sending your Christian kids to Marxist colleges and you're paying for it. It's not a good deal.
That is, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that is a huge concern. And I don't want to get off into all the education stuff. That's for another day. But so many people now are saying, send them to all of these Christian schools, and we need to check them out as well as, the colleges.
Well, look. My director, Judd Saul, sent his girl to a Christian school because he was sick of the indoctrination in the public schools. The first week, she came back doing a history project on Cesar Chavez, the Marxist labor leader. The first week, so these Christian schools, many of them are not what you think they are. They're not out there consciously promoting Marxism, but many of them have been infiltrated and are using textbooks and history lessons that have been devised by Marxists.
Wow. We're going to take a quick break. I'm so glad you brought that up. When we come back, we're going to delve more into this, more information. Don't go away.
I have been serving as a president of a women's club, which is really just a men and women's group where we come together, just common sense organization to get educated and equip one another. And so I really feel like this grassroots from the ground up is so important. However, what can you do to make it cool to be a Republican again? Like, how can you come across and share that with the nation so that it is cool? Because honestly, when my husband was running, family sells, children kids, education, prosperity, rising up, hardworking parents, teaching their kids to work hard. Those things sell. And I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, most people want those things. Health, we want good health care, all those things. So how can you inspire from the top down and lead? Because we live in whether we like it or not, we live in an influencing world. Social media is everything. And so I want to know what you're going to do to make it cool, not necessarily to be a Republican, but to talk about these things, because we probably all agree about several of these things. Only because we put an R by our name and we say we're a Republican, then we're kind of cast to the side. But these are values that most people actually care about.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I have one simple solution to this. Democrats have invested a lot of money in social media influencers, believe it or not. I didn't even know this was a thing, but there are these companies out there and they hire these young people and they can promote just about anything. I mean, I actually have a lawsuit going about YouTube influencers right now. I was shocked to learn that all these 20 something and even teenage kids are making millions of dollars promoting products. Well, guess what? They can promote ideas as well. And there's a couple of conservative companies that actually have a stable of conservative influencers. I'm 54 years old. I'm not going to claim that I'm like the hippest person in the world here, but you have to know what you don't know, right? And so you can hire very cheaply compared to the amount of money we blow. I think we had a consulting contract at the RNC in 2022 where we paid a famous person you see on television on Fox News, $800,000 for consulting services, communications consulting services. What do you guys think of the RNC's communications? I don't think we got our $800,000 worth. Let's put it that way. Now, let's say if we took that, we got ripped off, and that's a whole other story. But anyway, let's say you took that $800,000 and you spent it on 100 influencers and said, "Hey, kids, go out to these communities where you live and make videos. Make videos about what you're doing. Make videos. We're trying to promote early voting in your state. Make a video of you sitting around the table in your sweats or whatever with your friends and filling out your ballots and then turning them in, taking them to the city hall or wherever the voting place is." That would move so many more people than some boring lecture by somebody like me. So I think that that's something that we should do. That's smart. It's also cheap. I'm not saying get into TikTok, although some people would suggest doing that as well. But, I mean, young people do watch that stuff. But if you even just did Instagram or Facebook Live like this, if we use modern technology, imagine as I'm doing this, I'm thinking, when was the last time in my state party, the state party chair actually sat and answered questions from members of the state party? That would be never. But it's actually free to do that. You could do it from your living room. You could do it once a month. You could take it 15 questions. You could have pre-screened questions, answer a couple of tough questions, answer 13 softball questions, whatever it is. It's so much more accessible today to meet and do things this way than it was 5 or 10 years ago. I don't think we're making best use of that modern technology, and we should be doing more of that. And so I'd love to see us doing that.
Welcome back to the Conservative Continuum. I am your host, Mick Meow. Thank you to our sponsors. Once again, go to patreon.com/Mick Meow and become a sponsor today. Sir, we were talking about all of these woke colleges and these Christian colleges and the need to really determine what is being taught and disseminated to our children. And we were just kind of talking about how they're adopting all of these agendas, and we hear it. We see it in the newspaper. You hear it on the news, all of these assignments that are being given to them that are clearly Marxist agendas based on race and based on all of this intersectionality. So I do have a question for you. Um, if we have all of this going on in our colleges, and that is impacting thousands of America youth, but also in the churches, it's impacting these immature Christians who maybe aren't aware. They're just now getting their roots in, in Christianity, in the Bible, and their faith in God. So what kind of impact is that going to have on all of them? I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How is
Yeah, well,
that
look,
going to?
exactly. Every week, thousands of young people think, my life is directionless. I lack spiritual roots. Maybe I bet, I went to church when I was little. Maybe I better go back to church. Maybe I better reconnect. Maybe I better develop a relationship with God. So they go to the nearest church and they don't hear anything about sin. They don't hear anything about redemption. They don't hear anything about the Old Testament whatsoever. They hear a lot about their white privilege. They hear a lot about the social issues of the day. They hear a lot about being LGBTQ friendly, and they think this is Christianity. They are being completely gulled because they don't know any better. In our movie Enemies Within the Church, Pastor Kerry makes a great point. When they are teaching people in stores to spot counterfeit bills, right? They always teach the people, you're getting counterfeit hundreds, counterfeit 50s all the time. Well, they don't show them a whole bunch of counterfeit bills and say, this is what you got to look out for. They show them a real, genuine bill and show exactly what's in the real, genuine bill. And if they know that well enough, it's easy to spot counterfeits. Well, if you know real Christianity, if you're really steeped in the word, you've read your Bible under good teaching, sound teaching, you will easily spot these fakes, easily. But if you're just a fresh Christian, you're going to church, you don't really know, you don't really know the Bible. You just want to get spiritually connected. You are easy prey. You are easy prey to this Marxism. So you'll be going to church and you'll be supporting refugee resettlement and you'll be all fired up about global warming and you'll be out there supporting Black Lives Matter and you'll be worried about your white privilege and you'll be, voting for the left and you'll genuinely think this is Christianity. Because
Yeah.
how would you know any different? Because you've never been exposed to the truth of Christianity. You've never been exposed to the real thing. So all these pastors out there who say, oh, we shouldn't criticize other Christians. We should never criticize other pastors. If that other pastor is leading people straight into some delusionary Marxist form of Christianity and you say nothing, you are complicit. You're helping to send those people to somewhere where they don't really want to go. You are helping that process. Christians who don't stand up against wokeism are complicit. For he who knows the right thing to do but does not do it, for him it is a sin. It's a Christian's duty to call out sin and to call out error, and Marxism is the tool of the devil. So when that is in your church, or in any church, you should be calling it out very, very strongly. That's an insult to God, that the devil's doctrine is inside the church and millions of Christians won't call it out or are actually co-opted by it. My good friend Paul Kengor wrote the book Marx and Satan. Marx was a Satanist. These doctrines of white privilege, they're all based on jealousy. They directly contravene the Ten Commandments. It's a sin to allow these doctrines to infiltrate the churches. It's a sin not to say anything about it or do anything about it.
Amen. I 100% agree with you. I was in a church and we actually had a pastor who came in. He was a new pastor, came in and started talking about, that he was going to start allowing gay marriages, and it caused such an uproar within the church. And I frankly was glad to see it, because I was like, absolutely not. What are you doing here? How can you bring all of this and start speaking to it from the pulpit? So I agree with you. We have to stand up. We have to speak out. We have to call it for what it is. I really hope that more Christians are doing that. I hear that here in Oklahoma. You think it's the reddest state, but really, you have to wonder, because we've got some of that going on right here in our
Well,
state.
listen, you're getting this in the buckle of the Bible Belt. Oklahoma is ground zero, and you're still getting this in your churches. What's it like in New Jersey? What's it like in California? What's it like in Illinois or Michigan? You think it's bad in Oklahoma, you ain't seen nothing.
Mm,
But the point is, it is bad in Oklahoma. You're seeing these, and you made the point. This was a young pastor.
yes.
He wasn't educated 30 years ago in Bible college. He was educated 5 years ago in Bible college. And the Bible colleges are now woke. They are Marxist, and the young pastors are indoctrinated in this stuff. And believe me, we expose in our movie, if you do not accept this stuff, you will probably not graduate. You have to keep if you put something conservative on a blog post, you'll be hauled in front of a committee and condemned for your anti-Christian behavior. People really need to understand how deeply the Marxism has penetrated the Bible colleges. We all understand the universities. We see
Yes.
how woke they are, how completely anti-conservative opinion they are, how completely anti-Christianity they are. But the horrible thing is, the Bible colleges are not far behind. And your pastor was perfect evidence of that. Now,
Yes.
one of the reasons we did the movie Enemies Within the Church, because my friend Judd Saul was going to a little independent Baptist church in northeastern Iowa. They got a new woke pastor. And Judd raised this issue with his elders, and they didn't want to know. The final straw was when the woke pastor got the congregation to buy pizzas for the Black Lives Matter riot demonstration was going through town. Black Lives Matter is a Chinese communist operation, 100%. They are completely anti-Christian, but this young woke pastor wanted the congregation to support him. And unfortunately, most of them did. And now Judd is in another church, a much better church, halfway across the state. He moved right across the state to get a church. Well, it's actually Kerry Gordon's church, the guy who narrates the movie. He moved across the state to go to a church that he could support.
Wow. And sometimes that's what you got to do. You've got to take your, money out of the plate, and you have to move your feet, if they're not going to listen. Such incredible information and such a necessary topic, especially as Trevor has just said, here in the buckle of the Bible Belt. Don't go away. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to the Conservative Continuum. We are here with Trevor Louden, and we are talking about this Marxist agenda that is infiltrated in our churches. Yes, it has. Believe me, it has. We have evidence here in Oklahoma. So, sir, I want to kind of switch to a topic. You talked about Chrislam. I think I'm saying that correctly. It's where there's the combination of Christians and Muslims in this kind of uniting together of their faiths because they are both this Abrahamic faith, and so they should stand together. Can you please tell us a little bit about what that is? What is your insight into that?
Yeah, and I'm not, when in the battle against communism, there are times where it's okay to stand with different faiths against the common enemy. But what
Yes.
this Chrislam, is driven by people like Rick Warren out in California, Obama's famous favorite pastor, a man who used to support SDS, Students for a Democratic Society, a Marxist organization. And it is the bringing together of the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim faiths because they're all Abrahamic. You see, they're all derived from Abraham, and well, there's been a bit of separation since that time. There's no forgiveness in Islam. It's not like Christianity at all. It's a very aggressive, very violent, and warlike religion. So the idea of this interfaith dialogue was set up by the left, and it was set up by the Marxist groups to basically dilute Christianity with Islamic collectivist ideas. It was really about Christians should be Christians. And it's nice. It's okay to dialogue with other people. It's okay to work with other people politically, all this kind of thing. That's fine. But when you actually dilute your own faith to accept ideas from an opposing faith, that is no longer Christianity. That's I'll use the word bastardization of Christianity. And so the interfaith movement, driven by the left, and the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a semi-secret society set up by in Egypt in 1929 to spread Islam worldwide, has used this interfaith dialogue to weaken Christianity, to prepare the way for much more Islamic resettlement in Christian countries, to tolerate that which is intolerable with Islam. There are certain elements of Islam that should be intolerable in a Christian society. The treatment of women, for instance, the lack of any forgiveness. There are many things that should not be tolerated in a Christian society. So the Chrislam movement is about dilution of Christianity, about accepting Islamic and Marxist ideas into Christianity in the name of building dialogue. It's a scam. It's basically all about weakening Christianity. It's not about building strength in the Abrahamic, in the Abrahamic codes. It's about using Islam and Marxism. They call it a bridge. It's based on the code by Khatib. He talked about a bridge between Christianity and Islam. But if you read the text, the bridge only goes one way. It is Islam coming into Christianity, not Christianity coming into Islam. The goal is to Islamize Christianity, not to Christianize Islam.
I actually wondered that as I was reading through and getting a handle on that. That was a new term for me a while back. And so, that is what I have seen. It only goes one way. It's Islam into Christianity. It's not Christianity into Islam. So I want to ask you how. I know we're gonna stand up and we need to speak out and we need to be forceful about our faith and holding those those firm. But how do we address these disturbing trends? I mean, it seems like it's a tidal wave coming at us.
Well, you know what? That's why we did the movie. And I'm not here just to promote the movie, but any Christian who is worried about the trends in the church, watching that movie will make it very, very clear to you. And there's no sense you're listening to a podcast like this on a Thursday and going to a socialist church on a Sunday. It's not going to get you where you want to go. So what I am seeing is we are being basically betrayed by the political leadership in this country and the religious leadership in this country. Where we're going to come through this is the smaller churches, the independent churches, the home churches, the people who really make a commitment to their faith and have and actually take the trouble to be discerning in reading the Bible, and actually not just accept glib phrases from their pastor, but actually do their due diligence as a Christian. So there's that side of it. There's got to be that foundation. Then people have got to get out and tell the truth. Stop hiding away. Stop pretending that the world doesn't matter, that what goes on in the world doesn't matter. We're only going to be saved by telling the truth. And telling the truth takes courage. But where does courage come from? Courage comes from faith. If you really have faith, you will not fear anything in this world. How do you tell if your pastor is really a faithful pastor? He will be a courageous pastor. He will make a stand against evil and for good. This is what I say. We got to confront reality and tell the truth. And that pleases God because that is proof of faith. Faith is different from belief. You can believe in God. The devil believes in God. But having faith is a whole different level. That is where you can have complete faith in the message. You are living that message. You know that it take sacrifice. You know that it may give you trouble, but you know deep in your heart that good will come of it in the end, that this is God's will for you. So that is what I say. You know, if you're going to go along to get along, if you're not going to make a stand in your church, if you're not going to stand for what you believe in, well, are you really faithful?
Yes.
Because if you don't have courage, you should be checking your faith.
Yes. That is so true. What an excellent statement. I love that. We're going to take a quick break and then we're going to come back and we're going to check our faith. Welcome back to the Conservative Continuum. I am so grateful that I had you here today. It is such a necessary topic and we need this information to be given out. But can you tell us where we can find you, where we can get the film? What last words do you have for us? What have you got coming out? Things that we can listen to and learn from.
Well, to get Enemies Within, you go to enemieswithin.com. You can download it. You can get hard copies of the video. We've now got it out in Spanish and Portuguese. We're launching it in Brazil in the next few weeks. We want it to go worldwide, and we're already working on part 2. So, which is going to deal with more the global church, you know, what the Pope is doing, the sort of the big global amalgamation of all the religions that's being planned. So go to enemieswithinthechurch.com. You can get the current movie. You can make a donation towards supporting the next movie, all of that. For my own personal stuff, you get me on Epoch TV, Trevor Louden, Epoch TV, or you can go directly to my blog, trevorlouden.com. Now, Louden is Loudon. It's a secular blog. It's mainly about politics. I have a new series of books out there called Security Risk Senators. I profile 30 currently serving US senators with their Marxist and Islamist connections. These are people you vote for. These are communists serving in your Senate. And my new series coming out is going to be a 6-part volume, House Un-Americans. I'm going to profile over 100 US Congress members, their communist ties, their ties to China, to Cuba, to North Korea, to Russia, to the communist movement, to the Islamic left. We are being infiltrated politically and in our churches, both. So enemies within the church will deal with the church side of things, and the secular side of things, your politics. And politics is downstream from religion, by the way. Your religion shapes the culture, your culture shapes the politics. And the fact that our culture and our politics are in big trouble should tell you about the state of our religion. So to find out about the communists in your Senate, the communists in your Congress, go to trevorlouden.com, and you can order all my books there. You can read my articles. Yeah, that's what I'd recommend.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Any last words, sir? I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, well, I just want to say thank you, and I thank you for standing up. I can tell you from Oklahoma that is the reddest of the red states. It's a wonderful place to visit. But this is what we're at. We're in a spiritual battle here. We see it play out in politics. We see it, and we see it play out in the culture. But really, the root of it is in our churches. When our churches are standing up, our families tend to be sound. Our culture is good, and our politicians stay within their boundaries. When our churches are becoming rotten, when they're drifting off message, when they're no longer the moral leaders of the community, our families are falling into disarray, and our government is way out of bounds. It is getting way too powerful. So it all comes back to the churches, and it comes back to individual Christians willing to stand in faith and truth and courage. We've got to be Gideon. We've got to be David. We've got to be courageous. This time calls for courage, and that will please God, because courage is proof of faith. And maybe if enough people stand in faith and courage, God may decide that this great nation is worth saving. Maybe we'll get providence over this great nation.
May it be. I pray that I pray for a revival. I really do. I pray for people to come back. I am so grateful that you are here. I would love to invite you back, sir. I would love to talk to you about the involvement of Christians in politics. And should we be involved, and how do we bring that back? So we would love to have you back again. It has been an honor.
Really great talking to you, Mick. So thanks very much for inviting me.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. God bless. Welcome back to the Conservative Continuum. We are here with Trevor Louden, and it is an honor to be with you today, sir. We are so grateful to have you on our show.
Well, look, grateful to be on, Mick. It's been great to be on Conservative Continuum. I hope everybody will tune in at 7 p.m. on Fridays. It's a show that tells it like it is, and I've been proud to be here and hope to return in the future. See you then.
Thank you. And thank you to our sponsors. We are grateful for all of you. Make sure you go to patreon.com/McMeow to become a sponsor today.
And he was a big pro-life guy. And he was making databases for me. And he said, and he started, he brought Jill Stanek to New Zealand to lecture about pro-life. And Jill said, you should start talking to my daughter, Dana. I think you'd really like Dana. So I noticed that Andy was coming in really tired a lot of the times. And it turned out he'd been Skyping with Dana right in the middle of the night. And eventually he says, look, I want to go to America for 3 months to meet with Dana. Can I have 3 months off? And I said, yeah, okay, Andy, you go to America, you meet Dana. The very last, this was in Texas. They lived in Texas. The very last day before he was due to come back, before his visa expired, he says, Trevor, I've got married to Dana where I'm going to stay. And I said, that's good, Andy, I'm pleased. But this is it. The visa was running out. They wanted to get married in Texas, but you have to have a 2 days notice in Texas. So in Oklahoma, you don't. So they drove up into Oklahoma and got married on the last day before his visa expired. See, that's the sooner state.
Oh,
right?
there you go.
You can do it sooner in Oklahoma.
That's it. Sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Okay, but look, I better go. I got to go, Mick. So nice talking to you guys.
I'll
Thanks
talk
very
to you
much.
soon, sir. Thank you for curling up with us today. I am so grateful that you all watched my program, and I am truly blessed by all of you. I want to say special thank you to my guest, Mr. Trevor Louden. Please make sure that you all go to Counterpunch on YouTube or the Epic Times and go to enemieswithinthechurch.com and go to that website and make sure you get that video today. It's amazing. It'll scare the pants right off of you. Please make sure that you subscribe to the Conservative Continuum on patreon.com/McMeow. You can also follow us on Rumble and Facebook. The Conservative Continuum with McMeow is also on True Social, Telegram, Getter, and Substack. Now make sure that you all join in with us next week when our special guest is going to be Alex Gray, and he's going to do some follow-up with us on the threat of China. Don't forget, stand up, speak out, get involved, and be blessed always, my friends.